All right, today we're jumping headfirst into one of the most powerful philosophical essays ever written, Albert Camus's The Myth of Sisyphus. We're going straight to the heart of his argument about absurdity, suicide, and what it could possibly mean to live in a world that doesn't seem to have any meaning at all. So Camus doesn't mess around. He starts with a bombshell. For him, all the other big philosophical questions, what is reality? How does the mind work? They're all secondary. The real question, the first question, is this. Once you've judged life, do you keep going or do you stop? This isn't just some thought experiment, right? It's the ultimate verdict on existence itself. So, what makes this the fundamental question? Well, for Camus, it's not about abstract thinking. It's about the fact that your answer demands immediate, life or death action. Let's break down exactly why. To really drive this home, Camus gives us a pretty sharp contrast. He points to Galileo, right? The guy who figured out this monumental scientific truth. But when his life was on the line, he took it back. Pretty easily, in fact. Why? Because honestly, whether the Earth goes around the sun or the other way around, it's kind of whatever. It doesn't actually change the day-to-day act of living. But the question of whether life is worth living, that's a question people die for every single day. And that's the kicker. Camus is setting up this whole new standard for what makes a belief true. It's not about how neat and logical it is. It's about whether you're willing to live or die by it. If you honestly conclude that life isn't worth living, that belief, if you truly hold it, has a direct and very final consequence. And that's what makes it the most serious question of them all. Okay, so to understand why anyone would even get to the point of questioning life's value, we have to get a handle on the core feeling that sparks it all. And Camus gives this feeling a name, the absurd. So, what on earth is that? Camus uses this fantastic, powerful metaphor from the theater. Just picture an actor on stage who suddenly realizes that the set, the script, his lines, none of it makes any sense. He feels totally disconnected, like he doesn't belong there. That feeling of a deep mismatch between us and the world we're in, that is the absurd. And this really gets to the core of it. The absurd isn't something inside of us, and it's not something out there in the universe either. No, it's the friction between the two. It's our human brain, which is wired to look for reasons and purpose and explanations for everything, crying out for an answer and getting nothing back but the cold, silent, unreasonable universe. So this is what it actually feels like. It's that moment when the daily routines, the habits, all the little illusions that get us through the day suddenly just crumble. You feel like a stranger in your own life. You're in exile, but you can't even remember the home you lost, and you have no hope of finding a new one. You are just here, in a world that offers zero answers. And this brings us right back around to that central problem. If we genuinely confront this deep feeling of meaninglessness, what's the next logical step? Does recognizing the absurd automatically mean that life just isn't worth living anymore? This is the huge challenge Camus sets for himself. He looks around and sees that a lot of people who say life is meaningless don't actually end their lives. And he wants to figure out this contradiction. He wants to know if suicide is the only honest answer to realizing the absurd. Camus points out this paradox with a kind of dark humor. He mentions the philosopher Schopenhauer, who famously wrote about how great suicide was, all while enjoying a fancy meal. You see the disconnect there, right? The mind says no to life, but the body, the action, says a loud yes. So why the contradiction? Well, Camus suggests one simple reason: the sheer habit of being alive. Our body's instinct to just keep going is often way stronger than any logical conclusion our mind comes to. Think about it. We learn how to live long before we learn how to think. The body just clings to existence, even when the mind has already condemned it. But it isn't just our instincts holding us back. Camus argues that most of us find a really clever way to dodge the conclusions of the absurd. He calls this escape hatch, evasion. Evasion is exactly what it sounds like. It's the mental gymnastics, the trick we play on ourselves to avoid a harsh truth. It's basically refusing to live with that uncomfortable tension that the absurd creates. And here is where Camus really turns things on their head. For him, the most common, the most dangerous, the most deadly form of evasion is hope. I know, that sounds crazy, right? We think of hope as a good thing, a virtue. But when you're facing the absurd, Camus sees it as a betrayal, a fatal trick that cheats you out of seeing the truth of your situation. So what does he mean by hope? He's talking about the belief in an afterlife that makes this life seem less important.
or dedicating yourself to some huge idea like progress or history or revolution that promises meaning somewhere down the line. It's basically anything that lets you say, okay, this life might be meaningless, but. That little but, that's the evasion. It's a way of not taking the absurd seriously.
So if suicide is a surrender and hope is a dishonest escape, what's left? Camus says there's a third path, one that doesn't run away from the problem. This is where he starts to lay out his real project, finding a way to live forward. The goal, according to Camus, isn't to solve the absurd or to pretend it isn't there. No, the real challenge, the true rebellion, is to live in full awareness of it, to keep that clash between your desire for meaning and the universe's silence right in front of your eyes all the time, and not give in to it. And to live like this, you need two things. First, tenacity, just a stubborn refusal to be broken by this realization. And second, lucidity. That's a clear-sighted, unwavering commitment to look at your condition honestly, without any of those comforting illusions of hope. No flinching. And so we end up right where Camus' real exploration begins. He's cleared the table of all the false solutions. He's rejected both escape routes. The question that remains, the one that defines what he calls the absurd hero, is this: how do you live a life full of passion, freedom, and rebellion, knowing full well that it is, in the end, totally meaningless? And that question, that's the start of a profound and courageous way of life.